Mundaka Upanishad part 2. First shlok. This is that the truth of things. Works which the sages beheld in the mantras were in the Treta manifoldly extended. Works do ye perform religiously with one passion for the truth. This is your road to the heaven of good deeds, punya. All right. So the Rishi proclaims this is that the truth of things. Works which the sages beheld in the mantras were in the Treta manifoldly extended. What's happening here? Something is hidden in this. All right. Let's discover. So, the 4 yugas in the Vedic tradition have been Satyug, Treta, Dwapar, and Kali. Now, what do they represent? Do they represent the passage of time? Do they represent something historical? We have been led to believe that way, right? We believe that time is something external that happens to us. It's something happening in the clock or in the watch, and it's happening in spite of us or outside of us. We take it as an objective entity, right? So, this is the mug outside of me, and let's say this is a watch. This too is. So, we start thinking of the 4 yugas in the usual way. We say Satyug was X years long, or X thousand, or X million years long, and stretched from this date approximately to this date. And then we say next came the next yug, and it dated from one particular point to the next one, the next one, almost like months in a calendar, right? That's how we look at the concept of yugas. Correct? Let's say we are currently in December, let's say. So we like to say that September was Satyug. And then came October, and then November, and right now it's Kalyug running. So that's the way we are accustomed to think. Something is amiss here. That's not the way Vedanta looks at time. Vedanta just does not look at time as an external entity. Vedanta talks only of 2, the Atma and the mind. If there is just Atma and mind, what is this third thing called time? What is this third thing called time? Surely this third thing has to be one of the 2 elements that Vedanta deals in. But time obviously is not Atma, because Atma is changeless. and time denotes change. So time is mind. So these four yugas, they surely are states of mind. Surely they are not one particular linear progression as we traditionally believe. There is something else there. Are you getting it? So then what is Satyug? Satyug is when the mind is totally centered in the self, the truth. Treta is when the mind is identified with thoughts. Dwapar is the body and Kalyug is sansar. So there is indeed a movement here, and the movement is progressively away from the center. When the mind is closest to the center, you call it, and when the mind is farthest from the center, you call it, which means some of us might be in this moment in Satyug. You are already living in Satyug. It's not as if we are condemned to live all our life in Kalyug. And unfortunately, some of us might be intermittently slipping away to Kalyug. When you are living a truth-centered life, you are living in Satyug. When you are living a world-centered life, you are living in Kalyug. Getting it? That's how we are to comprehend it. These are not spans on the calendar. These are not expanses in chronology. These are simply states of mind. Are you getting it? So, what's the Rishi saying here? He is saying that which originated in Satyug got expanse, manifestation in Treta Yuga, which is right. Because truth originates from the self and then through the poet seers finds expression in language, and language is thoughts, you know. Even if you are extremely meditative, yet language necessitates some degree of thought. Otherwise, you will not be able to speak at all. How will you remember which word to use? Even if you are extremely meditative, even if you are totally centered in the truth, yet you will have to retain some of your memory to express what you are seeing. Right? So when the seers express themselves, they have to maintain a very thin distance from the truth. Otherwise, they will recede into a great blissful silence. Their silence will be wonderful for them, but not useful for the world. And the rishis have students sitting in front of them. Remember, the setting is that of Upanishads. It's a face-to-face conversation. The rishi has to speak because the student cannot relate with the silence of the seer. The silence is beautiful but totally internal. It cannot be transferred or communicated. Only words can be communicated. And words, as we said, necessitate memory, which in turn is thought. Are you getting it? So what is being actually said here is that which originates from the center finds expression via the seer through thoughts and words. And what's the name of that expression? The name of that expression is the Upanishads. Getting it? So what does Treta stand for here? The expression. The expression that is rooted in Satyug. The silent root in Satyug finds poetic expression in Treta Yuga. That does not mean that the root waited for a few million years to find expression, because we are not talking of calendar events here. We are not dealing in history here. We are dealing in mind here. Clear?
Explained about the uh, time, the yogas is the state of mind. So maybe I am asking this question because I'm not, for the first time I have heard this type of definition. So for example, it is mentioned in our mythological stories that, Dasrath in his old life, he, kept tapasya for thousands of years and then got Ram. So, and the salvation methods, like in Treta, there was, we have to do yagya, and in uh, Satyug, we have to do meditation for thousands of years and so on. So, I saw one of your video about Big Bang, where you told that time is something that starts from you. Uh, so, like, this is, can you throw some more light on it? Like, I'm not able to get it. When you say that time is something that starts from you, and about the yugas as a state of mind.
See, first thing about mythological stories. In the spiritual world, stories are for kids. They have an importance, and the importance is that when a seeker is not prepared enough, then you entertain or prepare him with stories. You get it? So that's why every religious order or tradition has a lot of stories. Why? Because a lot of people are always immature and unprepared. You cannot give them the bare truth. So what do you give them? You give them stories. You say better stories than nothing. Right? So don't take mythological stories too seriously. While you have to also remember that all mythological stories contain the truth at their center. Yet a story is not just its center. A story is the entire narrative, the entire expanse, the twists and the turns, the entire build up, the ebb and the flow and the whole thing. And that not really is the truth. That just really is something that keeps you captivated, at the same time also keeps you in the loop that spirals up in a way, an upward spiral. It's a loop that takes you gradually upwards. So that's the whole purpose of stories. So fine. Now about time. It's very straightforward. If nothing changes at all, would you say time has lapsed? So that's what time is. Something that you use to measure change. If within you and without you nothing changes at all, then time stands frozen. And where is it that all the change happens? Mind. Therefore, mental activity is another name for time. If the mind is very restless and change is happening frequently, then you talk of time in a particular way, and if the mind is tranquil and there is not much change, then you talk of time in a different way. All right. Spirituality is not concerned with changes that you see here and there. So right now what I have said pertains more to your inner time. Now even when your inner time stands still, you could argue that externally things will keep happening, though even that can be contested. You see, without any change happening, even the clock would cease to move. Some change has to happen somewhere, otherwise in fact the very movement of the clock is the change. But you need not go into that because that will become a little too technical. Just think of the inner world here. Here time is all about your inner state. So always look at time in that way.
The way in which we define time in physical world and in spiritual world, they're different.
They are not really different because the spiritual world comes from the physical world. But to begin with, you think of or try to understand the inner world. There are no two different worlds. It's not as if the inner world and external world are different and hence have different rules and different concepts of time. Though that has been said at some places. They talk of chronological time and psychological time. But even that distinction is arbitrary. But useful. To begin with, it is useful to just look at the psychological aspect of time.
So currently there is one more myth which is going on and which is claimed by a very famous concurrent guru. So in that definition he defines these four yugas as a movement of sun across the galactic center, and when the sun is nearest to that galactic center there are Satyugas and Treta yugas, and when it is farthest, because it is an ecliptical movement, so when it is farthest it is Kalyug. I simply laughed at that, but there are millions of people who believe in this model of Satyuga, Kalyuga and all that as galactic distance between sun and galactic center of Milky Way. So can you will you speak something on that, sir?
I wouldn't have wanted to end it on this. What do I say? I'm not used to speaking much on extreme foolishness.
But sir, this is affecting
I know.
millions.
I know. I feel helpless about that. But what do I do? What do I do? I can only say what is the truth and put the reality in front of you. What do I do if they command the resources and everything else? What do I do if they are the ones having the reach to make their nonsense penetrate every home, every gullible mind? What do I do? The thing that you're talking of, I don't know whether it's there in a video or a book or what.
It's there in the video.
It's there in a video. That video would have reached maybe 1 million people, more than 1 million people. This conversation that we are having would at most reach a few thousand. It's a game of resources. It's not as if the fellow is so damn charming that people are flocking to him. It's about the money that's being put into the channel. So what do we do? It's below me to even denounce this, or a class 8 student is very suitably placed to tear this apart. An above average class 8 student. But these are the perpetrators of foolishness, merchants of superstition. They trade in nonsense, they feed on your vulnerabilities and ignorance. They very well know that you do not know. You know neither geography nor mathematics, nor do you know the laws of planetary motion. So these are not too difficult to know. Basic Newtonian physics. But he knows that the bulk of the world's population either does not know these things or does not care to apply the knowledge that they have. So they come up with any kind of outrageous crap, and it circulates. That's what I have been talking of. It's sickening. After a point, it does not even provoke resistance or revolt. It's simply sickening. You can just puke at it. How do you fight an earthworm? Huh? As a man, I take pride in fighting demons. I'll be glad to meet my end fighting a monster. But how do I respond when faced with an earthworm? And I do not know what to make of the situation. That earthworm rules. And he has multiplied himself into billions. That's what this new world is all about, no? Insult to science and insult to spirituality rolled into one. And it's a fantastic combo. It has to be fought. We'll see what to do, how to marshal the resources, what to do, what not to do. On one hand, it's a pain to be living in an age where the highest you can fight is an earthworm. This is the central narrative, the overriding story of our age. Even the biggest demons are simply, it is demeaning. Because there is no glory in fighting an unglorified enemy. Ram is Ram because he had a Ravan to fight against. You look at the dignity and the glory inherent in Ravan. Look at our age. We have to fight earthworms. And probably it's more difficult than fighting a Ravan.